What's going on, Brian?
Hey, how you doing, John?
Dude, welcome, man. I appreciate you taking this time to do this. I know you got a lot going on. Get your hands full with three daughters like me, right?
Yeah, yeah, but it is a little slow right now. Not leaving too much.
Yeah, exactly. So, dude, tell me about Brian Hummel. So you work for a nonprofit and you're involved with the Arizona Diamondbacks. Kind of piece that together for me.
Yeah, so I work for a ministry called Unlimited Potential Incorporated. Been around 40 years. Started 1980. Tom Roy, the founder of our ministry, was doing a outreach that Billy Graham had put an ad out to see if anyone wanted to do a sports outreach, and he did a baseball camp with the Milwaukee Brewers and New York Yankees. He was a former player and rounded up guys, and then started taking players on short-term mission trips, professional players, and doing free baseball clinics around the world, and then using that opportunity to share the gospel. So when baseball became an Olympic sport, we were getting into places that most ministry organizations had no shot at getting into because of the baseball component and bringing professional athletes with us. So that that's where it started. It was actually Hank Aaron that really moved Tom to start this ministry, and then I was playing baseball with the Milwaukee Brewers and got involved in their off-season Bible studies, and then some of the guys that were on staff started discipling me, and then when I got done playing, I joined their staff, and then a couple years later moved out to Phoenix to fill in the role and become the chaplain for the Arizona Diamondbacks. That was in 2004, so I've been doing that, going on my 16th season with them doing it.
Dude, I can imagine that, in what you think initially God has plans for you and your faith and how you can influence in the big leagues, and yet it turns around and kind of it you have an influence in the big leagues, but it's a whole different picture than what you imagined, right?
That's funny because when I got drafted, I wrote in my journal in June of 1995, Lord, I could see the plans that you have for me. You want me to make it to the big leagues and share the gospels with hundreds of thousands. I'm like, just sign the contract. We're in. And 5 years later, two torn ACLs, a torn labrum, and a rotator cuff. I'm out of the game. And I'm like, what happened to our plan? And so T. Roy would always say, it's better to make a king than be a king. And the Lord's plan did work out. I now am behind the scenes and impacting guys in their journey with Jesus who have opportunities to share with hundreds of thousands of people. So it's not how I drew it up, but I wouldn't have drawn it up any other way.
Now, so did you make it to the show with Milwaukee, or were you in the
No,
minor leagues?
yeah, double A was as far as I went. I had some spring training big league games, but yeah, that was, blew it all out. uh,
You
yeah.
know what, dude? I can imagine even in that faith journey in trying to, like you said, figure out, okay, this I made it, God, this is going to be the plan, and then all of a sudden that get kind of yanked out from underneath you. What did that journey teach you about your faith and what God was doing in your life?
Yeah, good question. My last spring training, we didn't have a chaplain that was doing the minor league sides for the Brewers, so I was doing like a devotion every day, and then doing chapels on Sunday, and then that fueled me. That was a passion for me. You got 150 guys in camp, and I'd have half of them at these little 5-minute devotions that I was doing, and God had certainly given me favor within that organization. And so when I got released, it was 2 days before Easter. And so I went to Cecil Cooper, who was the minor league coordinator at the time, and I asked him, "Hey, you know, I've been doing chapel. Is there any way I can come back on Sunday and do it for the guys?" He's like, "Please," and I did. And man, if a handful of the guys came to know Jesus, I left that parking lot weeping, at just saying, "Jesus, I did what you asked me to do, and I don't know what I'm going to do next. So I trust that you're going to direct me there." But as a competitor, I wanted to keep playing, but I knew physically that just wasn't going to be a possibility without some serious surgeries. And I moved to Houston and lived with a buddy of mine who was playing for the Astros, and got involved in the church there, and was getting pitching lessons and doing ministry. And then a couple years after that, I came on staff with UPI. So, I mean, the transition was tough, but uh, I have to trust the Lord. I clearly couldn't play anymore, so I'm assuming He's going to direct me somewhere else, and He did.
I had a cousin of mine play all the way through AAA, and just the stories he's told me, just the craziness of what the minor leagues, what that life is like with, I mean, the drinking, the party, and the groupies, all that stuff. I'm sure there's a lot of young men that are just all caught up into it. But at the same time, there's probably guys just really dying for some realness and looking, searching for something, right?
Oh, for sure. And it's even now, I'm like, and I'm working with, players all through the Diamondback organization, but specifically at the major league level. And I just had a conference Zoom Bible study with the D-backs earlier today. And one of the questions I asked them was like, what were some of the things that you used to pursue that no longer satisfy you? And one of the guys goes, success. I pursued success so hard. And he's a great player. And he's like, but it, it didn't, I just was never satisfied. I was never satisfied. No matter how much I achieved or how well I did, I needed more. And it's like Ecclesiastes. He's like, I was just chasing after the wind. And, and so guys, they get there and they think, and a couple of the guys are talking about, man, I was on a World Series team and I got there, and after we were celebrating, we didn't win the World Series, but I thought, this is it. I thought there was going to be a lot more to this. This is a fun celebration with my teammates, but now I've got to drive home, and now what? you know?
Yeah, life goes back to normal at the
I
house, right?
know. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So in your story, dude, and I posted your video. It's such a powerful story. We got to jump into that. Tell people the story with your daughter Ellie and kind of what happened with that.
Yeah. So Ellie is now 13, but when she was 18 months old, uh, they found a tumor in her kidney, and it was kind of this mass whirlwind. And they were like, "Hey, we're going to need to do chemo. We don't know about surgery." And we're like, "Well, pump the brakes. We don't even know if it's cancerous." And so long story short, they found out it wasn't. But every 6 months, we were getting ultrasounds just to check the progression of it. And typically, after 8 years, because she was born with hemihypertrophy, so like the left side of her body is bigger than the right side, and they're susceptible to a Wilms tumor, which is the type of tumor that she ended up having. And our oncologist, like, you can go for another opportunity to have another ultrasound. It's up to you. She's getting older. Usually they test out of it. And I didn't want to spend the money for another one. And then just before she turned 8, she's lactose intolerant. We ran out of milk. I'm like, ran out of almond milk. So I'm like, hey, all we have is regular milk. She's like, well, I don't care. I want a bowl of cereal. Well, your stomach's going to hurt. So she drank it and her stomach starts hurting. And that night, Kim rubbed some peppermint oil on her stomach. She's like, man, I'm feeling something kind of hard in her stomach. I'm like, all right, well, let's just go to the doctor in the morning. We show up June 13th of 2000 and geez, I can't remember, 14. And the nurse looks at us and the doctor looks at us and says, hey, I just called Phoenix Children's Hospital. You need to go there ASAP. They are waiting for you. I'm really sorry. And I looked her in the eye and I said, Jesus doesn't make mistakes. I needed to hear that because I was panicking in my head. So we show up there and June 15th, like, we got to move the surgery up. We've got to pull this thing out of her. And that was Father's Day. And so I told her, I was like, hey, bud, it's going to be fine. We're going to get through it. I know you're hungry. I'm not eating. I'm not going to eat until you eat. I'm walking with you through it. And they came out of the surgery after a couple hours and went into this room right here, keep it in my office. And the doctor said, I'm really sorry. She has stage 3 cancer. There's nothing we can do right now. We're gonna have to close her up. It's covered her so many organs. Her spleen, her pancreas, her kidney is consumed with it. The inner lining of her abdomen, her small intestine. We can't remove it. It's too dangerous. So we'll just close her up and start heavy doses of chemo. And obviously that was a sad moment. I felt like I'd betrayed her. And 3 days into it, she's feeling terrible. Neither one of us have eaten. I can't leave her side. I have a journal for her that for each of my kids. I started when they were born. And I brought that, had Kim bring that to me. And I was like, I need to read you some things just in case you never get to hear what I have to say, what I've said about you and what you mean to me. And so I started reading it, and she's dozing off. I was like, "You want me to read more?" She's like, "Yeah." And so that morning, we're just waiting for what's supposed to happen next. And I just wake up praying, talking to Jesus, pulling out my hair, and I tell you, it was as clear as day. I can, like it was yesterday. Jesus spoke in a non-audible voice to my soul, "Brian, you need to be patient with me." And that changed my whole uh, just perspective on it. I was like, all right. Walking around the hospital in the middle of July with my wife for a second to get some air. Said Ellie's either going to dance with Jesus or she's going to dance with me. And I just had to release her to the Lord. And I've got friends whose kids didn't make it. And I'm not sure why Ellie did. But I'm thankful that she's active, she's healthy. That was a long year process, but she's doing good now. And I'm thankful.
So they had gone back in and done some more tests or whatever, and then found that it was just completely gone, or?
Yeah, so we had another surgery a couple months later after a lot of chemo, and just a lot of prayer. And man, the Lord shrunk that thing pretty good. They actually just had to remove her left kidney and an adrenal gland. And doctor came out. He's like, so went back into the same room, but with joy this time. He's like, I got it. I got it. I was like, oh, praise Jesus. Yeah. So we had more chemo and more radiation after that. And she got down to um, really little, but she got through it.
Dude, what a testimony, brother.
Yeah.
What a testimony. And I can only imagine in the journey, in the midst of the journey, the whys and just the real stuff that you struggle with, right? And what that does for a marriage. I mean, I can see from a marriage
Yeah.
standpoint that either brings you together or it pretty much pulls you apart. What did that look like for you and your wife?
Kim was like, she went into mama mode and started researching how to combat this. We really wanted to stay away from chemo as much as we could just because of the toxins that it does to your body and the after effect of it. And she was just every night up all night doing it. And she finally, the Lord, door after door after door after door just kept getting closed. And every door was like, you need to do the chemo, you need to do the chemo. And she's like, her quality of life is going to be brutal if she does make it. She may not have kids, she may not this or that and the other. And I said, I'm more concerned about her faith, right? If your faith is strong, then what difference does it make about your quality of life? Because you can endure anything, right? With a strong faith. And I said, our prayer is that Ellie is healed. Our hope is in Jesus. And I'm not about to flip those two because I won't make it if I do. I won't make it. And so you're right. I'm laying next to her, but I can't comfort her in the way that she needs to be comforted, nor can I. But the Spirit was comforting our whole family in this whole process. And we have built, by the grace of God, a beautiful community of people around us. And they rallied around us. And it was pretty special. The baseball culture, it was awesome. There was guys fasting during the season, during the surgery, while they're playing. I was like, it was pretty cool to see people just come alongside and help. The ministry I worked for was awesome. They like, dude, stay home. I was home for 7 months. I didn't work. They let me do that. And we've got a tight brotherhood of relationships with each other. And they rallied around me big time.
Dude, I can only imagine too, in the story that you've been through. Now it's like your faith has become stronger to the extent it's like, okay, nothing that happens to me now.
Yeah.
It's really, I mean, I've got faith that's amazing that I didn't have before, but it's like, man, I've been through this, and the Lord brought me through this. Brother, bring it on.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my buddies used to say, a faith untested cannot be trusted. And our faith was tested, and it proved that Jesus is trustworthy. Now, even if Ellie should have died, he's still trustworthy because the rain comes on the just and the unjust, right? The Lord gives and takes away. In fact, I took my family, we went through the book of Job and through Jonah. My fear in this, if I can be honest here, was that my youngest Selah was 6 at the time. She has a very logical mind. Like I'm like, she's going to end up being a lawyer or something. And I didn't want anyone in my family to shake their fist at God and run from him through this. I need them to cling to him in this, especially in these times, cling to him. And so I wanted them to learn about this side of God and understand that he's in control, and we live in a fallen world. And they'll even ask me in the middle of all of the cancer treatments and the chemo, she's like, why did God give me cancer? And I'm like, well, that's a legit question, but Ellie, God did not give you cancer. I go, Adam and Eve, when they fell and ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, sin entered the world, and so did death. And it took Adam's body 930 plus years before it finally broke down. But ever since then, everybody's body's been breaking down. Everybody's body break down. But Jesus did not sit idly by. He did something about this. And he's more concerned with your soul than he is about your physical state, because your life is but a breath, right? We're here today, gone tomorrow. But your time with the King is forever. And I go, that's what matters. If he wants to heal you, he can. But you're walking with Jesus. That's the most important thing.
Dude, and that's what I love so much about your story in the video that I watched, because you said something, I'm paraphrasing. It doesn't matter about the quality of life or anything else. If she's got Jesus, she can handle whatever life throws at her.
That's absolutely right.
Bro,
Yeah.
and that's what I sent the video to my wife and my 3 girls. That's the piece I want them to understand and get, because that is the message, right?
Yeah. I always say my goal is to be able to take a nap in a small boat in the middle of a fierce storm. Just curling up to Jesus. It's all good. He's in control. If he wants to calm it, he can. If he wants me to ride the waves, I'll ride the waves. But he has the words of eternal life. I got nowhere else to go.
Dude, what has this whole journey taught you about being a father?
I mean, a lot. For Kim and I, the number one thing that we try to establish with our girls is trust. And because, as you know, you can look at a marriage and say, oh, love's the number one thing, or communication. But if trust is thrown out the window, it doesn't matter how hard you try to love or how much you try to communicate. That's all gone. So as being a father, I can trust Jesus. I've got to make sure that my girls can trust me. So I'm not asking them to go someplace that I myself am not willing to do or go. And I want them to walk when they say if you're leading and no one's following you, you're only going for a walk. So I want to make sure that as I'm walking with them and as they're coming, that they're trusting what's going on. And so Kim and I work really hard on developing that with them. And so the biggest thing, probably one of the biggest moments in our life, is when my oldest was 12. She was on her iPad and looking up animation stuff anyway. As something happened, she found herself looking at things that are dark, and Kim caught it, took it away, and I was like, what happened? And she told me. I was like, oh man, Abby had locked herself up in a bedroom or locked bathroom, and I said, hey bud, I need you to come out. She's like, you're gonna kill me. It's like, no, I'm not. I've never been that way to you. I'm not about to start. I go, I need to see your face. She goes, well, I don't want to see yours. I go, well, that doesn't matter. And I held her face and I said, I love you, bud. I'm sorry that you've seen this. I love you. You're not mad? No. Oh man, I mean, it's my fault. I didn't protect you like I should have, but we'll work through it. I'm walking with you. And then like 2 months later, we were praying and she goes, Dad, I got something I want to tell you. I've been thinking about whether or not I should share it with you all day, but I remember 2 months ago how you dealt with that situation with me, and I can come to you. I go, what is? She's like, I said a cuss word at school today. It's like, all right, bud. Well, I appreciate your honesty. How do you feel now? She's like, well, I didn't feel good doing it, but I feel better now talking about it. I was like, all right, well, just take that to Jesus. It's all good. He loves you. I do too. And so it's this no strings attached, no condition, loving them. Even when we say something like, I'm going to go get ice cream. You know how when kids are little, they get all amped up all the time. Well, I wanted to make sure that I never said, just because their behavior changed, I never took away the ice cream. I didn't want to hold that over them, because now I'm teaching them conditional love. If I say we're getting ice cream, we're getting ice cream because trust is incredibly important. And I need to make sure that I honor my words. And my youngest holds me accountable like nobody's business with
Yeah,
that.
they have a tendency to do that, don't
Oh
they?
yeah. But if they know if they can trust us, then they're going to trust our journey with Jesus. And now hopefully that'll connect them closer and have a smoother transition to the King. And that's obviously our heart's desire, that they walk with Jesus.
Dude, just the incredible example of grace. And I think about this a lot in the last few years and the season that I'm in. I know many times the grace that God gives me is the same grace that I owe my kids, right? In
Yeah,
times of
sure.
difficulty and trouble. And I know there's times that God's just up there shaking his head going, Finch, not again. It's like we've been through this 1,000 times and you're
But
still doing right.
I know, but I tell the guys, I'm like, Jesus does what oftentimes we think God expects perfection from us. Well, no one could pull that off. Oh, in fact, he had to come down and do it himself because no one could do it. So he's not holding me to that standard, but he is asking me to put my faith perfectly in him. And that's a totally different thing. So it's like, man, we fall down, like maybe walking down the road, I fall into a ditch, I get back up, I keep moving. And he keeps moving me towards him. I'm like, all right, we don't have to start all over. Yeah, I've jacked that up. But you know what? I've talked to the King about it. I've confessed it to my wife or whoever it's involved with. And I just keep moving. We keep moving towards the King, you know. Just keep,
Amen, dude.
yeah.
It's just, I think so many men and dads, and I need to hear that. It's that grace that, okay, when our kids messed up, man, I love you. It's okay. We're going to get through this. And you said it, I'm going to walk this journey with you. I'm going to be right there by you. Dude, that is so powerful. And it's something every one of our kids need to know. And what that's done for you and your legacy as a dad, bro, that is good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. We have our
So
challenging moments, but we keep grinding it out, loving on them and be
absolutely.
patient.
What's been one of your biggest struggles as a dad and how'd you overcome it?
Um, you know, my dad carried a lot of shame. His dad never told him he loved him or was proud of him. And he passed away when my dad was 16. So I never got to know my that grandpa. But my dad was constantly trying to prove himself, trying to gain approval. He worked hard, he was successful, but that became kind of central to him. I struggled to follow and tried to follow in those footsteps, and I would carry some shame as well. And so, as a father, as even with my wife, I would get defensive almost immediately, if anything, because I was carrying this, and it just. So how I got through this ultimately is, I don't even know how many years, at least 6 or 7 years. I just started going in my closet right when I wake up in the morning. I got a pillow in there and a Bible. I read, and I got my knees and my face. I'm spending about close to an hour in there every morning. And then it got to be where I set my alarm so I could do it. Then it got to be where I started asking the Holy Spirit to wake me up when it was time to get up so that I can meet with Him. And this is not a proud thing. This is an awesome thing. I haven't set my alarm in probably 5 years. And it doesn't matter what time it is. The King wakes me up an hour early every day. It's the greatest thing in my life. It's the greatest journey that I can go on there and talk to him, and he would commune with me. And man, I don't walk in the shame at all like I used to. Occasionally it may pop its head up, but I know who I am. I know who he is. He's made himself known to me. And who am I that he's mindful of, right? And you. And it's the joy of my journey is that I get to go in there and talk to him every day.
Dude, and just that switch in your belief and knowledge of knowing you are a beloved child of the King, right?
Yeah.
what
Yeah, for
that
sure.
brings and the confidence and everything. Not that we still don't struggle and have our ups and downs and bad days, but in all of that, and I love what you say about the grace part, your whole story and what it helps other men understand, of we're not perfect and we're going to mess up, and I mess up all the time and have to ask my kids for forgiveness. But it's in that they see that I love them and that, man, I'd do anything for them.
Yeah.
The shame too. I'll tell you, we interviewed John Eldridge for the movie, and
Mm,
one of the things that blew me away when he started talking was talking about the generational curses and how, it's not only addiction and a lot of these other things, but it can be fear, it can be shame, it can be all of those things. And I had no idea it could be those things. And so
mm.
for you to see that and be aware of that and be able to break that chain, bro, that's legacy changing stuff.
I didn't grow up in the church, so I I came to know Jesus at a church camp when I was 11, but at 13, my parents owned some restaurants, and this is where the cook was married and she had two kids, and she was 23, and we ended up in a hotel room. And what I thought was going to be a magical moment in my life as a young boy became a horrible event for me. And I remember sitting myself between the toilet and the tub right after that happened at the Best Western. And my little understanding of the Lord, even though I didn't grow up going to church, my mom had a children's Bible, and I read that when I came to know Jesus at 11 at church camp every night before I went to bed until I was 13. So I had some concepts of God, but that was it. But what I had experienced in that moment in a hotel room, I assumed that God was through with me because I'd only really known conditional love, and that's what I thought was happening. And I didn't know who to tell, so I didn't tell anybody, and I just wore that in my soul. And it wasn't until a handful of years ago that I realized that it wasn't adultery, that I was molested. Having kids now, I'm like, well, that's not a normal situation at all. And so when I talked about shame, I carried that, and it manifested. So an escape for me was athletics. So playing baseball, and I was a pitcher, I'm like, I can win this game. I can beat anybody, because I did not want to feel I did. And every time I would lose, I would find myself back between the toilet and the tub at that Best Western, thinking I ruined it. And all the while thinking God was so upset with me. But it wasn't until my sophomore year in college at Louisville. My sister was like, hey, I called her up. Everything was really shipwrecked in my life. Tore my ACL, suspended for gambling, just crazy stuff, and involved in a bunch of bad things. And my sister's like, you need to turn to Jesus. I was like, there's no way he's going to take me. It's like, yeah. So this is in April '93, and I did. It just, it was like he pulled me out between the toilet and tub. I'd stuck there for 7 years. And he's like, you're my boy. And then I just began to pursue him. Just couldn't get enough. Still can't get enough of him. Just continue to pursuing him. So,
Dude, I think a lot of that too, in the men that I talk with, and even myself, my personal struggle for so many years was, and I don't know where I got this perception or this idea, but it was as if God was up there with a gavel and he was the judge.
mm,
And it was like I had to do so many things to get him to not bang that gavel or to please him or whatever. And it was performance based to a big degree. And I know within the athletic arena, man, that becomes a big deal because dads are all about, if my kid performs well on the field, I'll love him. But if he doesn't, I'm done, that type of thing.
yeah.
Is that the way you saw God, or was it a different image?
I did actually see the Lord that way. I was high into performance. My earthly dad never did that. He was my biggest fan. He even before he died, he would tell people about me, and he came to know Jesus shortly before he passed away, and it was such a cool moment in our relationship. And my dad never felt that way about me, and I'm thankful. Even before he passed away, I shared with him what had happened to me when I was 13, and I felt like I needed to have some talk with him about that. And his response was awesome. He's like, man, I wish I'd have protected you. I'm really sorry. That meant a ton to my soul, and but yeah, performance was a huge thing in my journey with God. I was memorizing a Bible verse a day and reading through the Bible 3 times through a year. And I was trying to earn favor with the Lord. It took me years to realize I had it. But it's just the way that I'm wired. I don't, I'm all in. I don't go halfway with it. So I was just, so, and it was one of my buddies that said, man, I spent more time meditating on the word than I do reading it. So I was like, oh, am I doing it wrong? Maybe I should do something different. But no, I still enjoy the word. I'm still in it every day. And
Dude, I can imagine too, in the struggle that I've had with my girls going off to college and stuff, is it's that fear that you didn't do enough. And it's, and, God, they are totally yours now.
yeah,
There's not a lot that I can do. I hope I've done the best I can, but of all the places I've failed, they're yours. Please watch over them and guide them. You learned that probably at a much younger level with Ellie and everything that she's going
yeah,
through, the real sense of they really are God's, not ours, right?
yeah. I mean, man, what would we do without Luke 15 and the prodigal son story? I'm like, it's, I'm more concerned about my girls being the self-righteous ones because they're not growing up in the same environment that my wife and I did, with a bunch of cruddy decisions. I don't want them to base their worth on the fact that they haven't done something. I want them to base it in the King. But I mean, it's the Lord's the father in that story, and he's got 2 kids that are pretty messed up, and he's loving them both. And so that's what Kim and I are trying to do. Just love them, trust, extend grace, be patient, walk with them, instruct them when the opportunity arises. But I mean, there's no guaranteed success that they're going to leave our home and kill it for the kingdom. That's my prayer. But um, I do. You're right. Releasing it to the Lord, having to do that with Ellie all those years ago. It doesn't mean that I don't want them to. I want them to do well, but I can't. I have no guarantee of that either. You know.
What's been, I know you've probably got some fascinating stories in with being of the Diamondbacks and the organization. Anything you can share with us there, that some God stories, some things he's done?
Man, been there a long time. I've had some awesome guys come through to pour into and built some awesome friendships. And that's probably the hardest part about what I do is that the turnover with these guys and getting traded or released or whatever. But 2018, the Diamondbacks were in first place for 5 months. That team was my favorite team. And there was 6 guys on that team that were locked in. And we had a bench coach locked in. And we had some other, and he was infiltrating the coaches. I had the players are like praying for the teammates and doing a pregame prayer before every game. And over half the team, sometimes 20 plus guys were coming to this thing. And, it was cool just seeing them taking their faith and owning it and encouraging others and reaching out to others. And it, it was awesome. Obviously, I would love to have said, hey, they made the playoffs and won the World Series, but that's not how life is, right? And so since then, 3 of the guys have been traded away, and they're doing awesome and loving Jesus, loving people where they are now. And I always say, hey, all you guys are overpaid missionaries. You know,
Dude,
you're able to reach a unique people group, and you need to do it.
and you know what? It's the ones that you see that have that platform that use it for that, for their testimony and what God's done in their life. Those are the ones that just that is so amazing that they choose to use it for that reason, because not everybody does, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So as we wrap up here, dude, tell me, what's the best thing about being a dad?
That I get to love people, love these girls, and that I get to walk with them. And my wife and I cherish it. That the Lord would allow us to come alongside of them. That I get the opportunity to reflect who God is and what He is like in their lives. And I hold that very high from my soul. And and I'm setting the bar really high for their future husbands.
Amen, bro.
So I'm like, but the best part of it is I love having fun and hanging out with them and just loving them. I'm thankful. Yeah.
Dude, just hearing your story, you remind me of we interviewed Neil Jeffrey, who's a pastor here at Prestonwood Church in Dallas, and played was All-American at Baylor University in football, and went
Mm,
on to play for the San Diego Chargers. And one of the things I'll never forget he said, you know, John, I was following my dad, and I ended up following who he was following, which was Jesus.
mm.
Dude, that's got you written all over. I love
Yeah.
it because it's your kids are going to follow and know Jesus because you and your decision to follow and know him. And it's
Yeah.
such a powerful thing. And I can just see it in you, bro. I love it,
Mm.
man.
Oh, that's cool.
You're an absolute stud, bro.
I appreciate
Last
that.
question. Um, if you got a new dad sitting in front of you and he says, what's the piece of game changing advice that you'd give me that's gonna take me the rest of my life and be a really good thing as a dad? What are you gonna tell him?
To find a place in your house that's sacred, make it sacred, and start meeting with the King every morning with him. Get in scripture, spend time talking to him, but get in that place. It says in Matthew 6, the Father who is in secret sees in secret. And Jesus says for us to meet with him in secret and to go into that place and just start learning how to commune with him, because without that interaction with the Father, I don't know how I I wouldn't know how to do it, honestly. I mean, I know the Bible and have verses and that understanding, but it's the prayer for wisdom, it's the communication, it's the time spent. I walk out of there, and the last thing I say is Psalm 16:7. Keep me safe, O Lord, for you are my refuge. Maybe 16:1 actually. It's 16:1. So just that I would lead them in a way that encourages them to desire to want to get to know this King that I serve. And that's a great example. Have you seen The Chosen? Have
I
you heard
have.
about
I've
that?
seen that. Yes, I've seen the first couple episodes of it.
Oh man, so good. So I really have enjoyed watching that series. But one of the things it says in one of the episodes is that Simon Peter talks about being a fisherman. He's like, all Dad did was take us out to fish, and we just sat and watched him, and soon we became fishermen. And I think that's what we're supposed to do with Jesus. It's exactly what your friend said.
Yeah,
Yeah,
dude, I love it.
yeah,
I love it, brother. I appreciate you, man, and I'm so glad, Spencer Patton. I got to give a shout out to that guy. Hopefully, he's going to
yeah,
watch this.
yeah. Right.
Even though he's in Japan right now,
I know.
and got a little stuff going on. Hopefully,
Yeah,
he'll watch this. I appreciate him getting us connected, dude.
yeah,
And again, thanks for your testimony, brother, and thanks for doing what you do and the influence that you have and using it in the way that you're using it.
yeah. I know. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.